Yo, speaking of keeping up with, have you guys heard about Ligma? I heard it's deadly.
Wait,
I'm pretty sure I got diagnosed with Ligma.
What?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my.
Are you okay?
But that's exactly what we're
Ligma?
talking about.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Insert to Join podcast. I'm Andy, the narrator.
I'm HoosierBoy.
And I'm your buddy Lupo.
And we're going to be talking about differences in audience demographics, culture, and interests between content creation platforms. One of the primary topics is definitely going to be the audience demographics, the differences there between Twitch, Mixer, and YouTube primarily. That's what we're going to be focusing on. And before the podcast, we were kind of brainstorming some ideas, and I want to start this off with Hoosh because he was absolutely on fire. So Hoosh, go ahead and let's try and spit some of that back out.
Okay, yeah. So some of the stuff we were starting with, guys, was to kind of get in the right mindset here. When you're thinking about culture and identity on a platform and like the communities that take place on those platforms, you really have to like think of like what stands out first on those platforms, right? Like in sports, you're going to think like, okay, that fan base is rowdy, that fan base is respectful, that fan base is toxic, like whatever it is, you're going to think about things that like fit that narrative. So like what I want us to do is like spitball first, like what's something that stands out to you as far as like, you know, what might identify best like culture of the platform. So like my first example was like Kappa and Omega Lol on Twitch. Like those things are like pretty like universally known on that platform. Like those two things are like huge memes, they're huge emotes, like everyone knows those things, and they're used in fashion that's both like, you know, like joking, you know, funny, and like, or like even sarcastic. Like that's just kind of like where Twitch is at, man. Like I think arguably the people who are the most witty and the most comedic would do the best on the platform. Obviously the most talented, like that's the big thing on Twitch, is like high competition, but that's like a different side of it all. Overall, like I think those two things are like symbols of the community, you know, and in a certain degree. And then on Mixer, I made the different comparison that I think like Mixer's right now in its current state has the comparison to be associated with Xbox. So I'd say like Xbox and the demographic associated with Xbox carries over to Mixer, along with the Mixer default logo of being like the blue robot and the blue circle. Like that's a big thing on Mixer because there's so many users that don't take the time to create a custom profile, and how that's kind of created a different environment, a different understanding on Mixer. So like those are just some things I was running with. And maybe if I had to spitball one for Twitch or YouTube on top of my head, I would maybe say like for YouTube, we have a dumpster fire, you know, personally, that's been my experience. But it's not because YouTube isn't a powerful and a powerful and like great tool, because it can be, when it can be a strong platform, but like they make so many decisions that are controversial or like not necessarily always content creator friendly, that's kind of one of the things I picture. That's kind of one of the things I roll with. But also like how's the community react to those responses? Because like how YouTube has treated its community, creators, and viewership has definitely affected the culture that it's cultivated. But you know, like I want to pass off to you guys, like what do you guys think? And like, you know, is that like, that's just how I think of like a platform. Like I find objects to like, you know, use to compare a platform to like something it is, or something it might be, you know, to me symbolize. So like, how do you guys like identify a platform and maybe the community and culture around that platform?
Well, I would definitely agree with it's not necessarily like stereotypes, but it's like the way you perceive them, because it's just how you've seen things for so long. You know, Twitch has been around, and it has been like that. That meme culture, like if you're not on the Twitch status quo, you're gonna fall behind. Like there's always something to keep up with. There's always like a regular trend.
Yo, speaking of keeping up with, have you guys heard about Ligma? I heard it's deadly.
Wait,
I'm pretty sure I got diagnosed with Ligma.
What?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Are you okay?
But that's exactly what we're
Ligma?
talking about. That's exactly what we're talking about. Is that, you know, if you're not up with things on Twitch, like you very quickly fall behind. It's very tight knit, and it's like high school almost, like the way things are treated, you know. But it's on a grander scale that content creators often use the tools at their disposal to either not see it, block it out, so they're a little bit more focused on what they can do. You know, Who's just talking about it a little bit before we got started, but like they have subscriber only and follower only modes to combat some of these things that may be deterrent to the broadcaster. You know, Mixer doesn't have those things, but the broadcasts are a little bit more intimate. So instead of just pushing away like the meme and troll culture on Mixer, it's a little bit more encouraged to train and, you know, let yourself be a vanguard of the platform, you know, because it is still growing.
Yeah, and that was my
I
issue earlier. Is like I think like in Mixer's current state that there's a lot of like self-policing and along with like maybe like even policing other channels to a certain degree. Like there's definitely I wouldn't say it's a stigma, but there's definitely like an expectation.
because there's so few people on the platform still, and it's still growing, that like you said, there is almost a necessity to self-police and kind of make the rules as we go, like not have everything be the wild west of form and function.
Yeah, and I like the way that we're taking this is trying to spend time dissecting what the differences are between demographics, cultures, and interests, right? So like one of the primary things that I like to do is just in particular spend time with chatters and content creators in general. So the more time that I get to spend with chatters and content creators, the more I get a feel for the platform. I've been on Twitch for about 8 years now. Primarily, I spent most of my time, my early days on Twitch, interacting with content creators that had lower numbers just to kind of see like who the interested crowd was. And that's just me always being interested in streaming and trying to get a feel for it really early on. And so that kind of helped me over, 7+ years develop an idea of the demographic for Twitch. And so I feel like I have a really good grasp on why things like Omega Lol and Kappa have been kind of staples in the emote world. It's really been like this evolution where Kappa is really like that central piece that's always been around. But from that, a culture has stemmed out. Some of Twitch's most successful content creators spend a lot of time investing in entertainment that's funny or that's comedic. And I think that that's a really good place for Twitch creators to be, because that's the demographic. It's not necessarily like it's an age thing per se.
No,
but it's definitely maybe the best word is maturity level. It's almost like it's a comedy grounds in a certain way.
Yeah, but you also think like that like you said, like you've been on Twitch for years and you were paying attention to the trends on Twitch. So like that community was cultivated by people who were there in the beginning, along with like trends that picked up based on community interest.
I'm definitely not saying that it's like that it hasn't evolved over time or that it hasn't changed. And I think that that's just the nature of media in general, is to adopt what's new and trending, and then eventually the culture consumes it enough to where everybody makes it their own.
Yeah, I can see that. But I also like, do you think like that? So like, here's where I want to lead into it, because I don't really think I finished my first thought, but I kind of forgot where I'm at now. So like, if to branch out to somewhere new here, do you think like playing along with those trends and like appealing to those like widely universal community interests plays in the favor of the content creator?
Absolutely.
So like just like being in trends, like being aware of like whatever's popular and playing towards whatever's popular means they're going to be more widely accepted to like, a vast majority of more people. Like that's always been my take on it.
Yeah, and I think a good example of this would be the streamer XQC on Twitch, because it's one of those, so like a free chat, quote unquote, is kind of a good way to retain viewership, I think. And we were talking very briefly earlier about like these emote only modes and like this follower only mode, or like you have to meet a requirement of some sort in order to chat. But like some of the most successful channels that I've seen, at least regarding culture, have been in those free chat modes or in those free chat streams. And so XQC comes to mind, Moon OW comes to mind as well. And then also a competitive Halo streamer from way back, doesn't stream anymore, Lethal, actually had a free chat as well. And despite what you see on the surface, it might seem like a free range chat is kind of hectic and chaotic, but when there's a time to be focused, most of the time they do like focus in. And so I do think that playing to that kind of crowd can get you really far. And I think in some sense, it also helps generate new kinds of content or new kinds of experiences for the people who are interacting.
So along with that, like if that's the direction we want to go with it, like, catering to those degrees and like being open, accepting of everybody, like, is there a case where like, where do you draw that line? Like where do you stop running free chat? And also like when you stop running free chat, like what does that say?
I think it comes down to us identifying what the differences are in the cultures between the platforms we're talking about. Because what I think that it could look like on Twitch is most definitely different than what I think that could look like on Mixer. So a free chat on Mixer typically doesn't work. And this is just in my experiences. You guys may know differently. But it typically doesn't work because there's a strange number of malicious users that I find. And it may not be that they're necessarily more frequent, but that since Mixer doesn't have as many users and as many, watchers, viewers, whatever.
Yeah, and like the experience overall is like more intimate in general. You know what I mean?
And it's like, yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at too, is that like it's almost too personal and too like it's too cut and dry. And when it is, if a Mixer streamer has 100 viewers and 10% of that population is just incredibly toxic and not, or is very,
or like they're there to be malicious, like if their sole intent is just to be horrible.
Right.
Like that stands out, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And on a platform where the biggest streamer, regularly, like I say regularly because like I'm saying like the viewer base I know, because we do have streamers on Mixer that get several thousand viewers, but they tend to be in like the Latin YouTuber like segment. Like that's just where it is. There's a ton of Latin YouTubers that excel on Mixer, so I don't want to speak on their behalf because I don't necessarily understand like, or I'm not very aware of like their communities and like their chat per se. That's my own ignorance. But like, for me, when I look at the top content creators, like generally we're looking at a viewer base of like 500 to like 200. And like, even then, like you can tell like people stand out, right?
Yeah, especially if they want to. They can.
Yeah, especially if they're looking to. And like, especially I think Mixer has, and this, I don't think it's exclusive to Mixer by any means, but there's definitely been cases of like just group griefing where a ton of people get together and they, they all get their buddies and they just go like, and give someone hell. And in that case on Mixer, like I said, I don't think it's any worse on Mixer than Twitch. I'd actually argue Twitch is probably worse by the numbers, but the experience as a whole is just more intimate on Mixer, I feel like, and that's what makes it stand out worse.
And I would say that as kind of a counterpoint to the Mixer versus Twitch thing, I would say that the percentage on Mixer is higher, even though the numbers on Twitch are greater. That's just from my personal experience over the last year and a half.
Like I said, I'm not aware into the numbers enough to say any better. I can only speak on Mixer's behalf and my experience on Mixer. I think like Twitch is so far in size and user acquisition ahead of Mixer that I feel like everything we talk about has to be by the numbers worse on Twitch technically. But maybe not in percentages. Like in percentages, if you're looking at an entire demographic of 100%, then maybe Mixer pulls ahead because even though it's a smaller pool, if you look at the whole 100% of the pool, what do we stand at? Like I would be interested in seeing those numbers in comparison.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the numbers of like, like true like 100 users versus like 4,000 users, whatever the numbers may be. But in a percentage of 100, what does that comparison look like?
Yeah.
Yep. And that's kind of where I'm coming from too, is that in my own personal experience, it seems like, where there would be 15% of malicious or toxic users on Twitch, there would be 20 to 25% on Mixer. That's from my personal experience. I'm absolutely not going to claim
really
any
knows,
of those numbers. And that's just what I view. But I do think that speaks a lot to culture and demographics. And so like to kind of twist this back around, and I would love to hear what Lupo has to say about this because we've been kind of dominating the conversation.
For sure.
But the idea is that like, okay, so if you recognize that and you start to build your content to maybe start to mitigate those kind of things. So maybe you think that it's better if you start to play to those, I guess, like that personal value that Mixer has. Do you think that you're going to see more or an increase overall in viewership?
I think so. Absolutely. Because of the intimacy of Mixer and how small it is, it's every troll, instance where you deal with a troll situation is an opportunity to train a quality viewer. And that's the way you have to look at it because, the platform is, I don't know, maybe a tenth the size of Twitch. I mean, if you look at like the top numbers and stuff like that, like, Dr. Lupo just passed 2 million followers on Twitch over the weekend.
Well, if we're going by that route, man, Ninja's almost had 10 mil, and our biggest guy is 235,000, plus. So, like, if we're looking at that regard, man, then like our biggest guy isn't even 10%. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
but that's what I'm saying. So, like, the size of the platform just makes it significantly easier to be on a closer personal level with the viewer themselves, and that would lend itself a little bit better to making it a training opportunity as opposed to just say, hey, look, like I have to do something to combat these things. and protect the rest of the viewers as a whole.
And
Because
do you think that's fair? Like, do you like that? The whole
I
self-policing?
me
and
personally,
stuff?
I love it. I really do enjoy it, because if you can give people the opportunity, like I think with the accessibility of Mixer to like Xbox as a whole,
Yeah.
because basically Mixer is on every Xbox in the world. Like it's got that kind of accessibility. So the people that are going to go into it, the people that are curious, like I think the average age demographic is probably somewhere between 12 and 16 on Mixer. So it's people in that impressionable age group where they hear something, they want to be funny, they'll go into a chat and call somebody fat or something like that, and to me that's unoriginal. But if they come in there and they say that, and you provoke them a little bit to like, maybe be a little bit funnier or something like that, you're engaging with them in a positive manner, like you're using their ammunition against them. And I'd say probably 7 times out of 10 it turns a lot of these people into quality viewers over time.
Yeah, possibly. Like, I mean, so on the counter spot of that, because like I'm all about cultivating community, and like, I've been lenient with people, just I use general practices. You time someone out for 5 minutes, you talk about it for like 2 seconds, you say like what's cool, what's not cool, they get on board, they're out, they don't get on board, they're whatever. And like, like I'm not saying it's always a hard ban, but maybe it's a longer time out, but we don't address it. And if they keep doing it, they just don't learn, they're out. For me, I don't really want to keep self-policing necessarily, because I don't feel like self-policing in the long run, it's not sustainable, it's not scalable. Like it's not like the community can only do so much. It's the support of the platform they need to really, set the rules, And
I agree with that 100%, like, and I think if it becomes to a volume perspective where you're consistently having more people in the chat and everything like that, it might become more of a daunting task. While you want to maintain the positivity of what you were doing initially, just the one-on-one focus of it may not be able to be as sustainable long term.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the issues that Mixer's going to run into, and like a lot of like also the fantasy of like why Mixer's so good right now, and we keep using the word intimate, is because we can afford to be intimate. Like the platform itself is just so much smaller, it can afford to be intimate. We can afford to have these like relationships and bonds and experiences and like the whole yada yada, because like Mixer just isn't in size, that saturated. And like I love that part of it, but eventually, like, ideally Mixer won't be this size. So then how can we still contain these values going forward? But also like, maybe that's a conversation for another time. To get back on the point though of talking about culture and like fostering community and like catering community and as a whole, like where do we like, if self-policing is something you want to do and like how we want to keep it, then necessarily like what's the point? Like, is there a point where that's not okay? What I want to say about it is like my biggest issue with self-policing is I feel like it allows witch hunting. If there's so much independence and righteousness in self-policing on the platform like there is right now, I think that sort of like independence has fostered witch hunts where, if people, idolize Mixer for the things that truly Mixer's great about, and then they, spawn a big group and a consensus of like what Mixer isn't about, it's easy to cultivate that mob mentality. And all of a sudden, this person who's done nothing truly awful is all of a sudden, public enemy number one. Like that's my only concern about it. And especially if you see scale, like if that mentality isn't like ditched eventually sooner than later, then like what would the result be? Just like one big mob where everyone has to, concede to righteousness? Because the last thing anyone wants to be told is how to be. Like no one wants to be told how to run their channel, and no one wants to be told like necessarily like what's right or wrong. There's obviously
people don't want to be told how to create, and they don't want to be told how to consume.
Yeah, and like it's one thing, like, we all can agree that like it's one thing if someone's like just taking shit too far, like that's whatever. But like what if someone's just like cussing on stream and everyone's like, this platform has an abundance of young viewers, like you should cater your audience to stream on team, and even if you're not going to be on team, like you should watch your mouth and like whatever. But like, obviously that wouldn't go well with a lot of people. I just want to talk about that. Like I think that's the extreme of it. I don't even say it's likely. I'd say that's the extreme of like if that sort of mentality isn't dealt with, or if that sort of mentality like stays around, I think that's a risk. I like the idea of like having more control in my channel. Yeah. Like I let stuff slide, and like I'm actually like trying to tone my mods back. I'm trying to say like, hey guys, you can let things stay out there. If someone says I suck, I don't need you guys to delete it. That's fine. I'm at a position now where it doesn't really kill the vibe if someone says that in my channel, and nor do I really care. So we can just let it sit out there, and if they realize no one's addressing it, no one's saying anything, then they're gonna just get embarrassed, hopefully. And if they don't get embarrassed, worst case scenario is they're just gonna be speaking into the air. That is what it is. But like, is that truly like how we want to deal with things forever? Or like, what if things like that mob mentality comes into effect and we're public enemy number one and we don't have the tools to properly defend ourselves, like follower only mode, subscriber only mode, or maybe just emote only mode just for shits and giggles? Like, I think those things we meme it up a little bit with like emoji only mode or whatever. But I think that like, having follower only mode or sub only mode isn't always have to be toxic. Now we did say like follower only mode could be used maliciously, where like people have follower only mode on to encourage people to follow the channel in the first place. But I think like that only makes the content creator look bad. It doesn't necessarily speak volumes of like the community, nor does it like, have to be used maliciously. Like I think the chance of it being used wrongly is worth it in regards to the benefit, the potential benefit even for it.
I think mostly it comes down to how you want to disperse control among the community. Because if you give control to the viewers, that mob mentality can easily take over. And I think that if you give control to the creators, then it becomes Mixer's responsibility to make sure that they're creating the right kind of culture along with the people who are creating on their platform, rather than saying, let's disperse the power throughout the community and hope that it goes well.
Yeah, and like my big thing is like I don't want Mixer to like be involved in my content necessarily. Like, like I said, like as a partner, I want them to, support me as much as they can, but I also don't expect them to do things for me, right? Like I don't need a global assigned mod in my channel to babysit, to make sure everything goes smoothly and make sure I'm never attacked. Like I don't need that. But what I want are the tools to ensure that if anything ever happens, that I can deal with it, right? Or like, or my trusted friends and mods can deal with it with me. That's what I really just want, is I just want the opportunity to, defend myself if anything ever happens. And of course, it's all hypothetical. I've never been truly harassed on Mixer, not nearly to the extent of other people, but I've, you hear horror stories. So like, I'm wondering, what if they gave you the tools to defend it? So like in my case, there's a feature on Discord, okay? Just people may not know this. There's a feature on Discord that stops you from posting embedded links, okay? Doesn't stop someone from posting a link, but what it stops people from doing is posting a link and then having that link's image associated with it immediately pop up. Now, people might think, why is that valuable? Well, months ago, I saw someone's Discord get attacked. Certain people joined the Discord with the sole intent to post like a nudity and a disgusting images to like make people vomit. I'm talking like maggots in hands, like in someone's bleeding hand, like disgusting shit. And they maliciously attacked that person's Discord, like a few of them, spammed that image in general chat because they could, and they had embedded links on. So all everyone ever saw was a wall of this disgusting, bloody picture. And like that was someone using, utilizing just being a troll to the very furthest extent of visual, like, assault. And I say assault lightly in this case. I don't really know what you call it, visual harassment. I don't know. Whatever it is, though, man, they just spammed this picture everywhere. It made everyone feel very uncomfortable, and to the point where someone had to take action. But thank God Discord had the ability to turn that feature off. So then if someone posted, you couldn't stop them necessarily from posting the links, but you could turn off that functionality for everybody so that nobody could post links. And then it gave you the opportunity to take care of it properly. Like that's all I want, is the opportunity to utilize tools to take care of the situation further.
Right. The option to be self-sustaining and to feel like you're more in control of your own content. And this is something that I wanted to mention a little bit earlier. I think that kind of what we're talking about too also builds community, because your loyal viewers know that you're on their side, that you have their best interests in mind regarding their viewing and chatting experience. So
yeah, exactly. If you have the tools to like not only protect yourself but others, like that's a good chance for like, a bonding of sort, like, sort of.
And that's exactly. And that's where I was going to bring it back to what Lupo said about the opportunity to like train a loyal viewer to say that like, hey, that's not cool. And look at, look at all these things that we're doing as a community. Hey, maybe be more original next time. We'll joke about it. We'll, you approach them in a positive way. And then it's literally a positive experience for everybody. And not only are you trying to like retain a potentially loyal viewer, but your other chatters know that you're trying to help them as well.
Like you're investing in the community that exists already.
Exactly.
Like you're doubling down on them 100%.
Yep. And that again speaks to the intimate culture of Mixer that's been built over time.
And that's sort of teaching I'm all about. Like I had a dude in my channel the other day. He was trying to do his boy solid, came in my channel trying to self-promote his boy. He's like, yo, come check out my other guy. He's awesome. He's the best. And, we timed out for a little bit. We talked about why that's not cool. And I'm like, dude, you're welcome to hang out. And like, but it makes your boy look bad. Like, that's what we talked about. I was like, how, makes your boy look like he sent you to come do this, which I'm sure he didn't, because no rational person would.
Yeah.
And like, after that guy got done with his time out, he's like, hey man, you're right. I apologize. Like, there's like, I'm just trying to help my friend out. And I was like, that's cool, dude. Help your homie out by telling your real buddies, like, or joining people's communities and like dropping his link in like where it makes sense. Not in someone else's, stream, maybe in someone else's Discord, or maybe just do it by hearsay. Because there's nothing wrong with you talking about your buddy and like bragging about him to a bunch of friends in a private conversation, maybe not to an open chat in the middle of, another person's stream, at least unwarranted. There's definitely some occasions where that's okay. But like, we explained it, we talked about it. Dude was cool. I hope to see him back sometime. And even the boy he suggested ended up being an okay guy. I am talking to him later about it and he was cool. So like, it's, like those opportunities on Mixer are unique and I do think like they're worthwhile. I don't know, man. There's definitely some issue with like scale that I think like Mixer could better address going forward as the platform grows.
Yeah,
that
for sure.
A little bit concerned to like, user protection and like, streamer success. But, like we're not there yet. So there's definitely time. And Mixer may already have plans in place to implement these features eventually. Like, Mixer's been pretty good about implementing features that are existing elsewhere. Like, Mixer just got a clip system. It's not perfect, but it exists. And, Mixer has, VODs, which I feel like VODs are pretty generic and staple, but like they didn't have to per se. So I think Mixer is going to become like a more not stable platform, but like a more standard platform based on like features on other channels or on other platforms. And it'll get there eventually, man. It's just not quite there yet. Like it's only been Mixer for a little over a year now. But anyway, we've talked a lot about the negatives. We talked a lot about the dangers. We talked a lot about community just in general. Like one thing we didn't talk about is like we talked about how like a lot of content creators on Twitch seem to have like a snarkiness to them, like a sarcastic tone, comedic value to them. What do you think stands out as like the value or like characteristic of a general Mixer streamer? Like we talked about self-policing, we've talked about the intimacy of the platform, but like those are like symptoms of the greater platform. Like those are characteristics of the platform. What do you think is the characteristic of the content creator on that platform?
Personally, like I think most content creators on Mixer, like it's like every single time we bring up a new conversation, we go back to the same themes. They want things to be intimate, and like they want it to be, they want people to be part of a family, of a large community. It's a little bit more personal for them, regardless of size. People like Boom and Syph, they're interacting with people on a one-on-one level on a consistent basis. Hundreds of thousands of followers, and still taking the time for the one-on-ones and the unique situations. So I think they value where we were 1 year ago, and to see how the growth has just been exponential over the last year.
Yeah, and I think that to answer your question, Hoosh, I think that it's the staple for Mixer, the staple creator is focused on community, a sense of creation in tandem with viewer experience that puts the creator alongside the viewers as a process of growth and development. And I think that, in my opinion, is probably the staple Mixer creator, at least when I am browsing Mixer and I'm looking for channels. I look for someone who, like, when you go in and you introduce yourself and they say, yeah, join our Discord. Join the Discord, chat with the viewers. You got some cool links you want to post, you can post them in there. While you're in here, what's your favorite game you've been playing recently? Like things that develop this sense of community, and like that it's not just about the
views, the clicks.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not just about the numbers that, oh, hey, you're just another viewer, but wait a second, I want to spend some time to get to know you. Or wait a second, we have a community that if I can't pay attention to it right now, and if I can't devote my attention to you right now, we have a community that can absolutely do that for me, or that is more than willing to open up their arms and bring everybody in that we can. Are
you saying like that's just something you want to see, or are you saying like that's where Mixer is right now? Like you think content creators
that's the general consensus of the entire platform.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And like, I don't necessarily disagree. I just want to make sure like that's where we were going, not just like
exactly.
What we want to see.
I do want to also point out though that I think that to answer one of your questions earlier is like, how do you, like, what do we do looking forward? I say we, but I mean Mixer. What does Mixer do looking forward? I think you're gonna find a lot of insight when you're watching like the differences between Cabby and Jared. And I think if you spend enough time at the top, or like somewhere up in the top 10th percentile of streamers, if you just spend time there looking at how they interact and how they deal with things, you're going to find, you being Mixer, you're going to find the different ways in which you want to address certain things. And it's not to say that anybody is right or wrong in any of the scenarios that I'm pointing out.
Of course, it's all subjective to the content you create, the audience you cater to, and
exactly.
All that.
And so like what I'm trying to say is that I think you'll find answers, but only by comparing, your top 10th percentile with your bottom 50 percentile. See the things, like you just have to spend the time. You have to get in and you have to actually look at it on the ground level. And I think that kind of, or hopefully that kind of answered one of your questions earlier, is like, how does Mixer go forward? Like, how do you know, Mixer can't always be this intimate place, or maybe it can, but certainly the numbers should be growing, and that should always be at the forefront of the Mixer group's minds.
Yeah, and I think Mixer is in that mindset. Like, we are growing. Like, more developers are investing in Mixer. Like, you're seeing more and more games release with native Mixplay integration. And like, for those who don't know what Mixplay is like Mixer's integrations. So like, if you've seen Twitch overlays, imagine like every content creator having the ability to put down below their stream a set of buttons that any user can interact with, and those buttons do things. In most cases, they kick off sounds for the stream. So like, someone can click a button and it's a jump scare on the streamer, like it kicks off a girl scream or something. In my case, I have a button where someone can push it, out comes a little bro fist, and I do nucks with the bro fist as if like I'm doing nucks with my chat. Like, that's one of my effects. So like, a lot of games are coming out with these effects, and like in the case of Vermintide and like Minecraft has a game mode where like with Mixplay you could do like a free run game mode, and the chat gets to decide the next like free run obstacle. Like, they can take out the floor from under you, or they can like put up walls and things, or like in Vermintide they spawn more enemies, they do more things. And I think even like Earthfall, I think, is latest game to come out. And it has like, you can spawn more enemies, or you can spawn ammo, and you can do all these things. Like, there's a few games that have come out with this, maybe even Killing Floor 2, I believe. But like, that's like one way like developers are further investing in like getting streamers involved in their games. And they're basically saying like, yeah, if you want to play our game and stream it, you have the option to get your community involved, and they can either screw you over or help you depending on the type of audience you're catering. And I think that's really cool for Mixer, and like having that sort of investment and opportunity is opening not only like experiences for streamers, content creators, and like, viewers, it's also opening up new reaches to like game developers. And in that regard, if you give people a platform to not only like create entertainment, but also create like something that facilitates, or that can be used to facilitate further entertainment, like video games, like that's going to be phenomenal. Like, the more people who develop for your platform, the more buzz I think you have an opportunity to like generate around it. Like, I think there's a reason Android operating system, other than the fact it's been around forever, is also more prevalent than iOS, as a market share, because it's so easy to develop for. Like, it's so widely accepted and so widely like to run with. And maybe part of me speaking on my ass because I don't necessarily know the numbers of like how easy it is to develop versus iOS, but like, the market share is like 66%, as Android operating system in the market. And a big part of that is because like, that's just like where the users adopted it. That's where people are developing, like people are investing further in Android, and that's, people want new stuff.
All right. So one thing I want to do is bring this topic home, wrap up our thoughts on finding success per platform with relation to community, culture, and interests. So I kind of want to do like and I always do this to like kind of in the podcast, but I want to do like a rapid fire. How do you, and maybe we can like split this up, and I can try and focus on the Twitch side, and then you and Lupo can do more of the Mixer side of it. But how do you find success per platform with relation to the things that we've been talking about, the community, culture, and interests, catering to those things, and like developing your content based around those things? Okay.
So like with Mixer's regard, man, we talked a lot about intimacy. We talked a lot about characteristics of the platform just being like the self-policing side of things, but also like how everyone ideally has like a very positive and encouraging attitude towards things. And also we talked about how there's a younger user base. Like I don't have the numbers, but I think it's safe to say that like the general audience on Mixer, like Mixer's their first experience with streaming, period. Like how many times do people come in here and they're like, oh, I didn't expect you to respond so fast. I didn't know you could talk to me. I didn't know like what these buttons did. Like there's a lot of education that goes on in Mixer in all regards. And because of all of that right now, man, I think that if you want to succeed on Mixer, starting out today, you have to be accepting of all those values. Like you have to understand that even if you're not necessarily like Mr. Rogers and so you're not the most positive person on Mixer, you don't necessarily have to be, but you have to understand like that's kind of where the community is. Like a lot of the community is like, optimistic and encouraging and maybe even a little sappy to a certain degree. But, like just be aware of that like, if you go with the angry anti-meta, you might turn off some people, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just kind of a realistic direction with it all. But also like It's the audience age and like demographic. Like, we don't know the numbers. I've been saying young adults. I think that's where people are. But the maturity on Mixer is definitely a lot lower. So you're gonna see a lot of those memes. You're gonna see the same stuff, like people cracking jokes on the latest and greatest thing. And like being aware of that and being in trend with those jokes and those memes and those whatever is gonna do very well for you. Like, I don't know how many times I have someone come to my channel and tell me to dab because the dab is still relevant to a large population of people. Like that's a thing. So being aware of those moves, not just in like the video game industry, but being aware of like pop culture as a whole in regards to like a younger audience will do you well on Mixer. Like if you're old salty grandpa and you're already settled in your demographic of being just like the dude who doesn't put up with shit, who's, just like the man and it is what it is. And if you don't like the way he runs his channel, then this isn't for you. Or your rake. The rake is real, where like, he's about as adulterated and to the point as it is. And if you don't like the way he does shit, then get out. Like, you can definitely be those guys and see success. But if you want to like come into Mixer and feel welcome off the bat without any like hesitation, as far as like, I'm not doing something abrasive to the general population of Mixer, then just do those things, man. Just be a genuine person, which is good for any platform. Be aware of like what's going on for young audiences on Mixer, just in general, young pop culture. Definitely be aware of like what's going on with Xbox specifically, just because it is true that Mixer being so heavily invested in Xbox does create a very Xbox first culture right now. Doesn't mean, again, I'll reiterate this till it's not a thing anymore, but Mixer accepts all platforms. But it would be naive to think that catering towards an Xbox first community wouldn't do better for you. The more things you have in common with your audience, the better your content will be received. So if you can put stuff out there in regards to like Xbox people, that's one more thing you have in common to build on. So that's my big thing is, man, is like build on, Xbox first content, if you can, if that's your thing. If it's not, you're good. Be aware of like, pop culture in the world and do your thing. You'll be fine.
Sounds good to me. Lupo, you want to follow up with that?
Yeah, that's a tough one to follow.
And I feel like I stole all the wind that you could possibly
absolutely
use.
Absolutely. Like, everything, it's like, all right, I want to touch this next. It's like,
that was my whole goal, was just to cut the legs out from Lupo. So,
I mean, we'll just keep reiterating the same things and further enforce.
Well, here's the thing, like maybe Lupo, you and I can kind of like not really debate this, but like, is there anything you feel like I didn't explain enough, or like anything like I said that you were kind of like, because like I said, like I'm just one person. This is my experience and my view, and I don't think I have like the best understanding of Mixer, period. But like, that's kind of like the general thing on Mixers. Everyone talks about Mixer love and Mixer community, and we've said the word intimacy more times than I would like to think. Like, it makes me feel like a romance novel. But like, that's just where we're at. So like with all these trends, like that was my interpretation of Mixer, and in the greater place of streaming. So like, is there anything I said that might have been like, maybe not so much?
No, I agree with pretty much everything that you said, and I definitely agree with what you're saying about like some people do have that off brand, like not every channel on Mixer is about love and close connection like that. Some people are a little abrasive, but within reason. They're not gonna sit there and call you an asshole, call you a jerk, whatever like that. But they're like you said, Rake is a very abrasive type of guy, and he's just like
Don't get me wrong, Rake can also be like one of the coolest dudes.
Dude, I love watching Rake. He's hilarious. But it's like if that's not your style of content creator that you want to watch, there's other channels, and if the people that want to get to know you on a personal level aren't your style either, you want to see like a high level of gameplay and people raging out and stuff like that, there are those types of channels too. So Mixer, I don't think Mixer is as diverse as Twitch is in that aspect, where you have many different styles of content creators. I think that we've all adopted that community aspect of things, and we all kind of want to just embrace more people because we are the growth, like we are the vanguards of the growth of the platform and everything like that. So we want to see that. But some people are old school, and they're just set in their ways of how they want to present things. And that's okay too, because people enjoy that. So for me personally, it's just about enjoy content however you like. And Mixer offers that particular aspect to every user.
Yeah, because you can truthfully create whatever content you want, and you'll see a degree of success. Like people have proven you, right? Like Rake is a partner content creator, and like I said, he's a good dude. But like when you think of like your general like Mixer like content creator, I wouldn't say Rake is the typical guy, right? No. I mean, like, but that's also not his thing. Like he doesn't want to be the typical guy. He wants to be fucking Rake, and I fucking love it. But that's the whole thing, man. Create the content you're proud of. But if you're that guy who fits in the middle, or maybe you're like unsure, like maybe you're wavering on like what the right move is. Like that's what we're trying to tell you. Like the right move is just, like here's the trends on Mixer. Here's what's going on. Being aware of these things will definitely help you just in general. And by the end of the day, man, if you're ever doing something that you don't feel comfortable with on Mixer, like you don't think like it's you, then just ditch it. Like you can just do what content, or create the content and enable yourself to create the content that you're proud of.
Yeah, to kind of talk to Twitch a little bit, I think finding success with relation to what we've been talking about in Twitch is influenced by how unbending the content creators are and how consumer friendly and ultimately content friendly they are. The perspective on that is when you think about the larger streamers, and I'm just kind of pulling from like Ninja, for instance, his chat experience and his viewing experience is very heavily moderated and has adapted over time, especially with his recent explosion. But it's really that like his chat experience really is unbending. And when I say that, I mean that it's heavily moderated in the sense that he really wants to control his content, right? And what people experience and his brand and everything like that. And I think that a lot of success can come from that in Twitch, because Twitch is getting to the point where it's so large that it's just prone to malicious users and people who are trying to scam people. And like, it's just it's a really good place to be, but it's also, it can be pretty scary sometimes.
Absolutely, man. That's where I always feel like, I feel like if you look at the extremes, I think the extremes on Twitch are a lot more severe than the extremes on Mixer. Like as far as I know, no one's been swatted on Mixer, but like, that's a thing on Twitch, and like that's a thing that's happened several times, in fact. So like, it's naive to think that Twitch does anything like anything's better on Mixer necessarily. I think it's just a numbers thing. Like I think as Mixer grows, Mixer's gonna have these same issues. Like we're gonna have the same exact toxic people for whatever reason, and we're gonna have these. Exactly. It's the internet. Like it's an internet issue. It's not a platform issue per se.
Right.
But also like the big thing to bring it all back is like community and cultivated community. Like Twitch has had a community that's been cultivated at, on a platform level for years, going on a decade, right? And like that is pretty set in stone. So catering like against that is going to be pretty difficult, because like that's just where all the general users are. Like if you're a guy who hates Omega Lol and Kappa, you're getting for a rough time. Right.
Sure.
But like, I mean, like, not that emotes are that big of a deal, but like, you get the big gist of it. Like if you're against the biggest things that stand out on Twitch, then you're going to be in for a rough time, man. As far as growth goes, doesn't mean you can't succeed, doesn't mean you can't grow, but like, that's going against the grain is difficult.
Right.
Not impossible, it's difficult. And then going back to Mixer, like, Mixer's going through a trend right now, man, where it's very easy to get noticed if you do things that cater towards, specific audiences. Like I kept saying, like Xbox first content, and Mixer is just as welcome for anybody, man. Like truthfully, if you're a Switch streamer out there, or you're a dude who still streams his Game Boy Advance somehow, you could do it on Mixer. Absolutely. You might even get an audience, but like, you'll see growth at a different rate than anybody else. And that's my whole thing, dude. Like, create the content you're proud of, but nothing wrong with, helping yourself out here, doing a solid and realizing, how to grow faster.
Yeah. And it really does tie into what we were talking about last week as well, where everything almost always comes down to a balance where, and, last week we were talking about game selection, and you kind of, sometimes you just have to make the decision. If growth is one of your interests, you need to make the decision to grow. Right. And sometimes that can be a much,
somewhere.
And sometimes that can be a much more business oriented mindset. And that's kind of what this final topic or this final subtopic is about, is to say that finding success isn't always about just doing what you like, but sometimes bending a little bit to cater to the culture where you're creating.
Absolutely, man. As long as you're creating content you're proud of, there's nothing wrong with bending yourself a little bit of ways to cater towards a more beneficial position to leverage later. Like I tell everybody, like I like Fortnite, but I definitely played it a little bit more often than other games, because it allowed me to get to a position where I could leverage the quality of my content more confidently, to other sponsors or even to other, audiences. People took me more seriously when I broke 10K followers than when I had 5K. That's just the realistic, that's just the realism of it. And, I liked Fortnite. It was the only game I ever wanted to play? No. But like I played it because I knew it would help me grow. I know I could create entertainment around it that I was proud of. And, it would work out for me in the long run.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Do we have any final thoughts before we end this episode?
I think we touched all the bases here tonight, guys.
Yeah, I know.
and a little bit,
I know
a little bit
we
more.
talked. Yeah, I mean, I do think we talked about a lot, man. I do think we talked about the negative side and the dangers a lot, man. Maybe a little bit more than we planned to.
Sure.
But
I think it's a necessary evil, unfortunately.
yeah, I think it's good to talk about it now, because if no one talks about it now, man, then this might be something we all run into in the future, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
like I said,
it's
like
Mixer's in a great position to learn from Twitch's downfalls at some stage.
oh yeah, I think it would be silly to like not take all of Twitch's experience over the years, and even our experience as viewers, and not cultivate that into like some form of business strategy, like or
I agree.
awareness. So that's the whole reason. I just want to say, like, I know we talked about a lot of negative stuff, and it's just that was the whole point of it, man. But
yeah,
I'm
and
good.
I think that from the negative you create the positive.
Yeah, or like you're more aware of the positive. If you
Exactly.
I feel like the biggest thing of anything is to realize like what is toxic or what sucks, so that if you're aware of what's bad, then you can absolutely identify what's working and what's better, and then run with that.
All right, so that was our episode on some pretty heavy topics, especially as we dove deeper into them. But yeah, we talked about the differences in audience demographics, culture, and interests between content creation platforms. And yeah, we did focus on a lot of sort of the negative things and how to mitigate some of those and things to look forward to, or how we can change and adapt and evolve over time to get to where the content creation platforms need to be, so that they have content creators and consumers at their best interests. And so that was the overall theme and topic of the night. I think we nailed everything. That's going to be it for this episode. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Let's do rapid fire sign off. I'm Andy, the narrator.
I'm HoosierBoy.
And I'm Lupo. Have a good night, guys.
Absolutely. And next time, we always got to ask, will you insert to join?